I'm Ian Hickie. I'm a professor of psychiatry in Sydney, Australia. I'm the co-director of the Brain and Mind Centre at the University of Sydney. We run a number of large headspace services and more specialised assessment services for young people with severe mental health problems. I'm also one of Australia's National Mental Health Commissioners, and that gives me a particular kind of interest in, do any of the things that we do actually have a significant impact on the lives of people we care about? In the national perspective that I operate in, and also in our clinical work, I mean, overwhelmingly for the last 20 years, there's been a consensus that the way we ordinarily do things is too late in the course of most of the illnesses that we're concerned about. Too late, not just in a symptom sense, but far too late in a social impact sense. So if what you really care about is how productive lives are led, then you've got to be concerned about, if people go off the rails in one form or another, do you get in early and minimise the social disability as well as reducing the symptoms or the stress that a person might suffer from? And I think it's pretty clear, if you do things traditionally, you don't have a great impact. Leaving open the question that if you intervened earlier, if you detected people earlier and did things at that stage, would you have a bigger impact? So I think in all of our national discourse in Australia, we know that just doing things the same way isn't that helpful. It's an open question whether doing things differently, an earlier intervention paradigm, different kinds of intervention, will make a difference. But that's the question that's worth exploring. Well, I think the great thing about the IEPA sort of movement is to say, look, if we are going to make a difference, we need to be committed to looking at things earlier in their course, not just taking things for granted. And we also need to be committed to testing whether things actually do make a difference. So maintaining a degree of skepticism rather than just having enthusiasm or blind enthusiasm. So I think these sorts of movements are very important. What I'd hope to see is a further development in the IEPA framework to not just talk about psychotic illnesses as the only way of understanding that degree of difficulty. Because I think the reality, and I think what you see in this meeting and in more recent meetings, is an understanding it's not just about specific illness types, it's about the way in which young people's lives go astray, disability associated with mental ill health, and needing to better understand what those processes are, develop a wider range of treatments, and have young people themselves more engaged in actually what's the nature of the problem and how might be best to address those problems. So I think there's a range of things that we really don't know. You know, what's the nature of detection? Is it best to focus on symptoms, syndromes as we understand them, or my own preference, much more to focus on disability as it emerges in association with mental ill health? Whoever we detect and have a fairly confident they have a need, do the things that we actually do make a difference? Or do we just spend more money, have more activity for more people, but don't actually improve the situation? So I think a lot of the assumptions that we will make a difference need to be more robustly tested, so that more confidently we can say to people, young people in particular, if you engage with us, we will make a difference in your life. That would not otherwise have been the case if you didn't engage with us. And that's not just a short-term issue, it's a longer-term issue. And to do that, we've got to be more focused on the outcomes that matter. So less about what I think preoccupies people from a medical background or a clinical background transition to a specific illness, and more about, do you lead a better life? You're more likely to be employed, you're more likely to have social relationships, you're more likely to have better physical health, more likely to feel better. Not just in the short term, but for the next 5 to 10 years. I think getting people into treatment is an idea clinicians have. More people in my waiting room, more people come to my clinic, or maybe I go out and find more of them in a particular kind of way, as distinct from empowering people to be more in control, in fact, of their own health care and use strategies that they actually are at the centre of. So I think technology presents really interesting new opportunities for engaging people in care in the way they want to be in care, having them organise aspects of their care as they see fit, and then having us, clinical services, welfare services, educational services, participate in more effective ways when they choose. So I think, you know, rather than thinking about how do we persuade them to use what we do, I think we have to think about how do we change what we do, including what they already do, which is use a stack of technology, to do stuff better to get the outcomes desirable. So I think that's actually one of the really interesting things, because I think it can potentially be very efficient and it can be affordable and actually be done. So it goes to a big issue of scale. We can't have great treatments for just 10 people while there's 1,000 people in need who miss out because we have not set up systems that can go to scale. And I think this is where technology could be actually quite transformative. Largely resisted by a lot of the health professionals, but largely used by young people who need our help.